Thank you. It's 12 o'clock and we have quorum, so we will get this meeting going. First, I'll look for disclosures of conflict. And I'm not seeing any. So we have the consent items. Would anybody like any of the consent items pulled? I'm not seeing any, so I'll look for a motion for all. Did you want one pulled, Councillor, or did you just need to make a comment? Is that just a comment, or do you actually need it pulled?
One question.
Okay, so why don't we put all the consent items on the floor? Do I have a mover for that? Councillor Squire? I can do this. So Councillor Squire has moved all of the consent items. Do I have a second? Councillor Ridley is seconding that. And go ahead, Councillor Armstrong, you have a question on item 2.3.
My question's to staff, and I hope I got the right one. I'm not quite organized here. About the recreational activity management system. In the background, you talk about that we had another system that we were going to use, and obviously we're looking at a different system now. And it sort of indicated to me that this other system wasn't going to work out, so we abandoned it. And it talks about, it looks to me like we abandoned it after it was implemented. Anyway, the first system, there's not much background about it, we had a contract, I would think. Did we pay anybody any money? Like, how far along did we get?
Through the chair, yes, we did have another supplier that wasn't quite working out. So I've got a staff member here today that I'll bring him up now to answer the other question for you.
Through the chair, yes, we did have a contract. It didn't ultimately work out. We had spent $37,500.
Well, I guess that answers that question. So that money was spent, no return, because we're not using it. And so I just have to understand, like, did we not sort of realize earlier on, before we spent the money, had a contract, didn't follow through with the contract, canceled it? Not that I'm suggesting this is the gas plants or anything, but, you know, the money's gone, and was there any value out of that, or is it just one of those things, money wasted?
Through the chair, yes, there was much value in that. We are using the current workflows that we developed for that system on the new system. As far as details, I'm not able to speak to those.
Okay, I think that covers it, but, you know, I think the thing we should have had maybe a little more background information. I like to know when things go sideways and we've spent money and there's little or no value in it, because that's what it's, but if I'm reading or misunderstanding the situation, then fine, but I think that would have been something that would have been important to know, that, you know, money was spent in very little value, and if that happens, we need to know that too. I mean, obviously, you go into situations thinking it's a good product, good service, it'll work, and sometimes things don't turn out, or you find out suddenly there's something on the market that's better, and obviously there is, but we kind of need to, I think, know when things go sideways. Anyway, thank you.
Through the chair, I appreciate the comments, and there was a lot of research done on the product when it was first entailed, and it just wasn't working out to the way that we'd hoped it would, and I can't give many more details than that, and that's why there weren't more details in the report. We're in the middle of a bit of a dispute with the original company.
Thank you. So it looks like we've made the best of an unfortunate situation. We've managed to get some value from the work we did do, from some of the money we did spend with the original contract, and now we are actually piggybacking on as well with other municipalities in this system. So it looks, as I said, making the best of an unfortunate situation, and with that, I think we can vote.
Chair, can I vote manually?
So Councillor Sally and Councillor Armstrong have indicated that they would like to vote yes manually.
Closing the vote, the motion carries 5-0.
Okay, so item 3.1 is a delegation request that we had already approved at a past meeting, and so I will invite the delegation to come forward. Welcome.
Thank you. So my name is Michael Cairns. I'm from the Accessibility Committee. This is Jackie Madden. She's the chair of the Accessibility Committee. The reason we wanted to come here and talk to you guys is we came a couple months ago and we talked about how we had done a survey, I guess, with the community and talked about ways that we could give more help to the city about what the problems are with accessibility. And we're in the process of coming up with that. But what we wanted to do is give you guys a couple of examples that we put issues forward and we haven't had results, or we've had troubles trying to move forward. So we want to make sure that we're doing it the right way. We don't want to waste anybody's time. We don't want to waste our time. We definitely don't want to waste your time. So how are we going to do it? So the couple of examples that we wanted to bring forward, one was with the Mayor's Honors List. Now there are other awards, there's the Arts Award, the Environment Award, Heritage, Housing, Sports. The one for accessibility was called the Persons with Disabilities. So we wanted to kind of be in line with everybody else. So we put forward a motion that read that Appendix 1-4A of the Council Policy Manual related to the Mayor's New Year's Honors List be amended to change the name of the nomination category number 6 from Person with Disabilities to Accessibility Champion. So we put that motion forward October 22nd of 2015. That didn't pass this committee on November 17th of that year, and then passed full committee on November 24th of 2015. So we thought you guys were in agreement. We just changed it to accessibility, and that was 2015. 2016 came up, and they still had the same Person with Disabilities name on it. So we didn't know what was going on, so we put another motion forward. And so that one we tried with the Civic Administration be requested to consider amending the Mayor's New Year's Honors List to from Person with Disabilities category to the Accessibility category, with the description being changed to award those who through action and or example foster an environment of inclusion that embraces the citizens of all abilities. So we put that forward in October 27th of 2016. That then passed this committee on November 15th, and then passed the full council on November 22nd of 2016. 2017 came up. It still hasn't been changed. So this is where we decided back then to say, well, hey, we got to get before you guys to say, hey, what's going on? It seems like a simple change that we think everyone should be in favor of. It's not a big concept, and it still hasn't been done. The other example we wanted to bring up was with the community gardens. The history in this one is that in 2007, the FADS document came up, was produced, And that one states that the community gardens fall within its scope. And specifically, in section 4.3-.14, it highlights that 10% of all plant beds, or a minimum of one, should be accessible. And how accessibility is defined is where they want raised, we would like raised beds, as well as an accessible path to get to these routes. So on March 15th of 2015, we asked that city staff come to us and tell us nothing had been done with that. How there are no accessible beds in all the community gardens. So May 15th, they came and they told us that, yeah, they agreed with us. And going forward, there would be, of all new beds, that there would be accessible plots. On July 6, 2016, the city established a new community gardens plot at Ed Blake Park. It wasn't accessible. There was no accessible plots. So in December 16th, December of 2016, after many requests with staff to say, hey, can you tell us what's going on? Can you give us an update? We had another meeting and they agreed. They said, we made a mistake and we want to move forward and we want to make it work out. And then last year in 2017, they did make the accessible path, but the raised beds, they didn't get done. So we did have a meeting with Ms. Kinsley. She came in January to talk to our committee, and she was great. She really was. She explained that there were problems. It just didn't get done, but she really presented a good idea of how they want to move forward. So our problem isn't with Ms. Kinsley. She really sounded like she was thinking, but this is the third time. In 3 years, we still haven't had any action on this. So the reason we came to this committee, again, just to reiterate, is that we want to be able to present you guys with good ideas. We want to present you guys with stuff that is doable, but we'd like it to get done. So how can we do it better? What can we do to make your job easier? Jackie, do you have any other comments to make?
I think you said it perfectly. We're just frustrated, right, when we put these things forward and they get passed, and then they get passed with us, they get passed here, they get passed at full council, and they don't happen. And then it feels like we're wasting our time.
Thank you very much. Councillor Armstrong.
Well, thank you, and thank you for bringing this issue to our attention. And I understand what you're saying when, you hope that things are going to be done and they don't happen. So I think the thing is, I'd like through you, Madam Chair, if you could have our staff respond to what's happened and can we deal with this in the future? Can we rectify the situation or work with our volunteers to make sure that, their work is recognized and that in future, where it's appropriate that we implement what should be implemented rather than have them here, feeling that they're spinning their wheels needlessly. So through you to staff, if they could respond.
Through the chair, we appreciate the feedback that the advisory committee members are providing to us. I think council will be aware that the city assumed complete ownership of the community gardens program in the last 18 months. We have had a role to play prior to that, certainly, and acknowledge that some steps were perhaps not followed through on. However, certainly in 2017, we've taken a number of steps to move forward, including working with the Accessibility Advisory Committee around approved designs and new designs for raised beds that will be in place in the coming year. I'm very pleased to hear that the committee members felt that they had a good response from our staff team, and I am committed, and I know Mr. Stafford is committed, that we will move forward and work to ensure the gardens are as accessible as we can make them as we move to implement some of these new designs. We've also engaged having a member of the Accessibility Advisory Committee sit on the Community Gardens Advisory Group in order to try and ensure that there's better communication and that we are more responsive to some of the desires and requirements. I don't know if, that good? All right, thank you.
Councillor Ridley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. To the delegate, you asked if you're following the right process or doing what you need to do. and I would suggest that you are. When your committee makes a recommendation, because when you pass a motion, it's ultimately a recommendation to our committee. And when our committee approves your agenda and your recommendation, that becomes direction from this committee forwarded to council, which council then approves. So I think from a process point, you're doing what you need to do, and I think it would be incumbent upon us in terms of our review to look at maybe how that's managed when there is direction that comes out of an advisory committee. Perhaps we need to add it to our deferred matters list so we can ensure it's completed or something. So I think if you leave that piece with us, and thank you for highlighting it and let us see that it happens. I think often the advisory committee agendas are a part of our package. We may pass them as a group or whatnot, but that means that we're supporting your recommendation, right? If we are just passing and receiving it, we're supporting whatever it is you're recommending, and then this committee is in fact recommending that. So I think all that I have to say is, thank you for raising the concerns to our attention, and I think from a policy and process point of view, I would like an opportunity to take a look at how we can ensure that those recommendations have the continuity and are carried through. And so I'm going to go back and take that to governance.
Councillor Squire?
I think you came here for some straight, I think you're getting a lot of political talk, with all due respect. Things were passed by a committee, they were passed by council, they should be implemented. And you still don't have an answer with regard to the mayor's honors list. So I'd like to get you an answer to that one. You're probably sitting there going, what about the mayor's honors list? So we'll get you an answer to that one. But look, I don't think we have to go to governance and get all complicated about this. If you get something and it's passed by committee and council, and you don't think you're getting action on it, contact a councillor, someone who's on the committee or the chair, and I think it'll be followed up on immediately by that councillor. So, if it goes to governance, it'll probably be, when I'm dead, we'll get it passed. So, I mean, with all due respect, I'm joking. But I mean, I think you want to know if something's going to happen quickly, and so let's do that. And if I was you, I'd be emailing councillors and saying, hey, your committee passed something and council passed something, let's get it done. And let's get an answer to the one on the mayor's honors list, which seems to me to be a really clear one. It must be terribly frustrating to see that something that's been changed hasn't been done. So if I could get an answer to that, and we don't need a lot more bureaucracy, we can just get it done.
Councillor Armstrong.
Through you, Madam Chair.
Excuse me, I had a question that I asked about the mayor's honors list.
I'm sorry, I didn't see that as a question, but I recognize that I didn't hear your voice go up at the end, as other people say. But we'll talk about the mayor's honors list as well. Absolutely. I know I'm going to go to clerk for follow-up on the mayor's honors list. Do you want me to do that now, Councillor Squire? Or
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a question.
Thank you. Through the chair, I'm afraid I don't have an answer for you. I'll have to touch base with the mayor's office with respect to that. I know it was sent to the clerk and to the mayor's office, but I'm not aware of the status.
My question, if I could jump in here, is how is it determined what the names of these awards are? Like, I can't imagine that. I just think this seems more like an administrative thing, so I'm sort of at a loss to see that it's the mayor's office that is actually in charge of the naming of the awards. Are they not in one of our policies? It's a policy adopted by council. Yes, go ahead.
In our first motion that we put forward, it was the council policy manual appendix 1, 4A is where it says, it specifically describes the thing. That's what we asked to have changed.
Thank you. And I agree, this seems like a really simple change, and it goes back many years, and I don't understand why it's taking so long. I'm going to go to Councillor Armstrong and then Councillor Helmer.
Actually, Councillor Squire sort of touched on same concerns, so I think that'll cover it. Thank you.
Councillor Helmer.
Yeah, it looks like we missed something, and we should fix it. I know that we passed that resolution back in 2015, and we are working through modernizing all kinds of council policies, including that one. We just dealt with it at council not that long ago, and we were dealing with it at the governance working committee, which is dealing with all the council policy updates. I'm on that working group, and I'll definitely be fixing it at that level if it's not already fixed and just a matter of not being updated yet, because the way the resolution was drafted, it really was a direction. It wasn't a request to have something changed, and that went through at council. And so I think it might just be a matter of administratively going and changing the name, because I think it's already been passed. So I appreciate that you're following up on it. I'm sorry that it's not been changed yet. I think the change itself is a very good idea, and I supported it 2.5 years ago.
Councillor Ridley.
Thank you. I think bottom line is on that one, we've already passed to fix it, so it will be fixed. I think our committee commit to that, whatever process we need to follow to get that done. Council already passed it, so we will fix it. And I think the other items, I think you've provided us with good feedback. And like I said, I think there is a way that we need to make sure that there's the follow through. We do that through our own items, through a deferred matters list. And I think we'll look at a process to take care of that. But I think anything we've already passed, we've already agreed to fix it, so it'll be fixed.
Councillor Sully.
Thank you, and I don't think there's anything left to be said, but I just wanted to say thanks for coming in and thanks for this opportunity. I know taking even more time out of your busy day, so just wanted to thank you.
I have one question more to staff regarding community gardens. Ms. Livingston, you said that that there's work that has been done, and I took from your comments that there will be things happening this season, this growing season?
Thank you for the question. So maybe I could just back up a little bit and talk about what was done in 2017 and what's coming forward. So in 2017 at the Ed Blake Park, there were new accessible design features that were installed. These included pathways, an in-ground garden plot, and 2 raised beds. Unfortunately, some of those were burned down. Their new beds have now been constructed and will be installed for this May. With Kiwanis Park Community Garden, there'll be 2 accessible plots, new pathways and raised beds that will be ready for also this 2018 season. Also in 2018, we'll be upgrading 4 additional community gardens in terms of accessible pathways, plots, and raised beds, and that includes Carling Heights, Nicholas Wilson, Ann Street, and Proudfoot. We've also undertaken to update our Community Gardens webpage on the City of London website to be able to show the raised bed availability. So trying to share that information with people. And over the winter season, we had 12, I believe, new raised beds constructed and available upon request. So we've tried very hard to hear the concerns and move forward. I appreciate it's perhaps not as fast as people would have liked.
Thanks very much for that. And thank you again for coming forward. Thank you for your delegation. Thanks for the work that you do on the advisory committee. I just want to check with you to see if what's happening, at least in the community gardens, is that acceptable?
The answer is great. There are issues that was kind of the same answer we were given in 2015 and 2016. So we love the answer every time we get it. We love to see the action. So hopefully we will have faith that hopefully it'll get action.
I like that Ms. Livingston provided specific locations, specific gardens where these things are happening, and specific date being May 2018. So I'm happy with the staff response for that. We will continue to look into the mayor's New Year's honors list. I'm wondering, I don't see an appetite from Councillor Ridley, but I'm wondering if it should be added to our deferred matters list, and I'm wondering why it hasn't been on our deferred matters list, since this was a direction that we gave and it seems to be unfulfilled direction. No thoughts on that from committee? I'll comment on it.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair. I would be happy to have it added to our deferred matters list just to see that we can follow through and make sure it's completed. In terms of a motion that's in front of us, I'm not sure what the clerk is working on, but I would be reluctant to redirect direction we've already given. If we've given the direction, it's my expectation that should just happen. I think any redirection undermines the direction we initially gave. So I would be reluctant to do that. My expectation is just direction we already gave is followed. But in terms of adding it to the deferred matters list, I'd be happy to do that so that we can check it off once it's done.
So Councillor Ridley, is it just the award, the honors list award that should be added, or do you, I'm satisfied with staff's response on the community gardens, but I'm wondering if you thought both should be added or just one?
I think a report back, perhaps a separate motion on the community gardens this summer, something might be useful for committee to receive. I think I would be contemplating another motion to look for civic administration to go through past advisory committee reports for any outstanding direction and add it to the appropriate committee deferred matters list, just so we've had this issue raised to our attention today. If there's anything else that slipped through, then I would like to be alerted to it.
Are you making that motion, Councillor?
Be happy to if I had a seconder.
Councillor Sully is indicating that he will second that. Can you reiterate your motion?
I think there's a couple in there. One was to receive the delegation. There was a motion for civic administration to review advisory committee minutes and look for any outstanding items and add it to the appropriate committee's deferred matters list. And then a specific piece in regards to a report back on the community gardens in the fall of 2018, and a further one in regards to the mayor's honors list.
So the clerk is working on that motion. Again, that is Councillor Ridley's motion, seconded by Councillor Sully, and we'll wait till that comes up.
Madam Chair, I think I saw them earlier trying to say something at the end to wrap up. I'm not sure if that was their intent or if they wanted to say bye.
Okay, so the motion's up, and if all you're seeing are the voting buttons, just hit that down arrow and you can see the actual motion. So Counselor Armstrong, are you voting manually, yes? No. Oh, no, you did it? Okay. All right, good. So we're voting.
Closing the vote, the motion passes 5-0.
Great, thanks again. Now we'll move on to item 4.1, and a request for delegation status. There's a letter in our agendas that is part of this request. Councillor Sully, and then Councillor Ridley.
I'll move it.
Thank you. I was just going to suggest there are two requests for delegation status, that we could perhaps move them both together and invite them back at an appropriate future meeting.
I just want committee to consider, in the past when we've had delegation requests around vehicle for hire issues, we've referred them to the upcoming public participation meeting. And I'm wondering if we want to hear a separate delegation on this matter or do what we have done with other delegation requests in the past. Councillor Ridley.
Thank you. I don't know for sure that there was a public participation meeting scheduled in regards to vehicle for hire bylaw coming back on May 1st. We had a request at a previous meeting from a gentleman whose first name was Yusuf, and I forget the last name, I apologize. And this came up and we were told that there was not a PPM scheduled as of yet, and therefore if we wanted to receive delegations, we should accept the request.
Mr. Katolik.
Yes, through the chair. This file is directly related to two charges that were laid, and incomplete and misleading information which was initially reported in the media, which resulted in a large public response in a so-called sting operation on volunteer drivers, and that is absolutely false. The vehicle for hire bylaw, as Mr. Kostafis reported out at a council meeting, clearly exempts nonprofits from the bylaw. And from an enforcement perspective, we consider this file closed. The May 1st meeting is not a PPM, it's simply an information report, reporting on the number of rides provided by the entire vehicle for hire industry, including private vehicles, limousines, and taxi cabs. It's all about the size of the pie. And in that report, we're also looking at options with respect to the cap on accessible vehicles, the cap on regular vehicles, and a number of other housekeeping items that the industry has requested. The PPM will be held at some point this summer, but in our opinion, this matter, from an enforcement perspective, is closed.
Councillor Squire.
I can tell you that the delegation with regard to Mr. Schlemmer, I'm going to have huge issues with that from a point of view of who's making a delegation. Is a legal counsel who is involved in this file making representations to a committee where confidential information, I think it's a bit of a hornet's nest that may be opened up, and I'll be fairly forceful in suggesting that when people appear in front of this committee who have appeared before as legal counsel and say they have the status of legal counsel, that they have to make that really clear. And then there will be further questions, I anticipate, about the nature of that legal counsel's involvement in this matter. And it's not going to be an easy matter. So I'm just forewarning that I don't think this is very straightforward at all.
I have a question for staff, and I know Mr. Kotsifas gave us assurances that that the bylaw exempts not-for-profits and charitable and volunteer organizations. I'm wondering, have we laid charges with this bylaw or any of our previous vehicle for hire bylaws on volunteer drivers?
Through the chair, no, we have not.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm not sure I actually want to take a crack at another opportunity to speak. Right now, we have a request for delegation. It's been my practice to support delegation requests. I think when the public wants to speak to us, it's important to. I think it's incumbent upon the chair to keep that on topic when the delegation request comes forward. So it would be my intent to support a delegation request whenever it's requested, because I think it's important that committees and council hear from the public, and this is their opportunity and avenue to speak to committee as a whole. And it is, I think, the chair's responsibility to ensure that that stays on topic, is appropriate, et cetera. I do have some thoughts on the subject of the delegation request, but I would rather save those until that delegation occurs.
Councillor Sully.
I was just gonna say, yeah, I don't need to say anything. I'm just ready to vote.
Pardon me, I didn't hear that.
No, I said I was gonna say something, but I'm good.
Councillor Squire.
I'm with Councilor Ridley. I'll approve the delegation request, but I think it's going to be a challenge that we're going to have to keep in mind to keep it on what the subject will be, because there's going to be a mixing there's a potential for a mixing of issues here.
Okay, any other comments or questions on this item? Then we can, as somebody suggested, we could move both delegation requests at the same time. So item 4.2 is very straightforward. It's a request for delegation at a future meeting. So we can put one motion together for both delegation requests. Councillor Sully is moving it, and Councillor Ridley is seconding. And we can vote.
Closing the vote, the motion carries 5-0.
So the next three items are advisory committee reports, and I believe there are directions in two of them, so I think we should handle each of those reports separately. So if somebody wants to move item 4.3, which is the Accessibility Advisory Committee report. Councillor Ridley is moving that. Councillor Squire is seconding. Oh. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Sully, and go ahead, Councillor Squire.
Yeah, the one issue I have, and I have this issue, first of all, I want to maintain the position which I have maintained all along, and I'll continue to maintain it, and so that for the record is that when we receive and file a committee report, we are not, in my opinion, ratifying, accepting their directions. I know there's a different opinion out there, but my opinion is that I am doing merely just that, receiving and filing. And if they direct that we, something in there, I do not accept that I'm approving it by doing that. That being said, I appreciate people disagreeing. I think at some point in time, it would be great to get a proper legal opinion on that, because I have a particular interpretation and legal staff may have another. But on this particular report, I just want to make it clear that there's a recommendation made with regard to the Medway Valley plan. And they have taken a certain position with regard to that plan, some of which affect my ward. We are going to be having a full public participation meeting on that matter, which will cover all these issues, and we'll be hearing from the public on it. So I want certainly clear assurance that I hope I can get from the clerk that by receiving and filing this report, where I'm in no way, as a member of this committee, and I don't think the committee will be, saying that we agree with the Accessibility Committee and endorse their view. I just don't want to be hit with that when it's dealt with further down the line. And I wouldn't mind, if it's possible, Mr. Card may say that I'm not correct in what I'm saying, but I'd at least like to maintain my position. He may have another.
Madam Chair, I agree with Councillor Squire that to receive means to accept, to acknowledge, not to endorse any activity that's suggested by the report itself.
Thank you, Mr. Card. And I know Councillor Squire spoke specifically about item 2.1. I read it as not asking this committee or council to endorse their position. It says quite specifically that the Conservation Master Plan be endorsed by the Accessibility Advisory Committee. And I just want to confirm with clerks that that does not mean any endorsement by this committee. It's just the advisory committee.
That's correct.
Thank you. So we have a mover and a seconder, and and we have Councillor Ridley.
Thank you. I just wanted to draw a little bit of attention to the Southwest Community Center, which is a very exciting thing for Southwest London. And I think that the playground proposal that is being supported by the Accessibility Advisory Committee looks great. Can't wait to get there. 6 months to go, is that it?
I'm not seeing any further comments, so I believe we can vote.
Closing the vote, the motion carries 5-0.
So moving on to item 4.4, which is the third report of the Community Safety and Crime Prevention Advisory Committee. There is one direction in that report. It's item 5.3 of that report, where they ask council to nominate a couple of safety videos that actually are available on the city's website. So that is a specific direction. I personally can't see any problem with that. I've seen the videos, and they are videos that are shown at schools and things like that, about teaching the safe way to use a pedestrian crossover and how to safely cross the street. So I just wanted to highlight that for committee, that it is an actual direction for action. Councillor Sully.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think we got the video in advance. Is there a way that the members of the public can be made aware, just in case they're trying to follow this meeting, what the videos look like or where they could find it?
So we can add an "it being noted" to the motion that says the videos are available at the following link, and put that, the link actually to the videos there.
Great. Can someone describe where that link is? Just so if someone's watching us right now, is it YouTube? Just so that they know where it's at, because we're just kind of voting on something and they're like, what are they voting on?
So there is a page in the book, in the agenda. Right at the top on page 72, it says the following content and resources can be found at http://activesaferoutes.ca/resources/pedestrian-crossovers. So the "it being noted" clause will include that link, so people can click there and go right to the videos. Councillor Ridley.
Thank you. I think it's great that we're submitting those videos for a potential award. Look forward to hearing back on that. I know the Active and Safe Routes to School, I'm going to say committees, because there are several of them at different schools across the city, have been doing great work, and I think it's an exciting initiative, and I'm glad to submit that for an award. My question was actually More on the 5.6, the pedestrian charter. This came up at our Civic Works Committee meeting through the Transportation Advisory Committee as part of their work plan, and that was actually deferred to staff because I think we're crossing some wires on that in terms of the work staff are doing and the work at the advisory committee and kind of what's moving forward first. So I'm just not sure what the actual request here is. It looks to me like that the chair advised TAC about support for the pedestrian charter, Toronto's pedestrian charter. So I have no particular issue with that, but I'm just wondering if that's in reference to the pedestrian charter that was recommended on TAC's work plan, and if so, if it, maybe, I don't know if either of the clerks here today attended the meeting and could add any more detail.
Through the chair, the individual mentioned in that clause is a member of the Transportation Advisory Committee as well as the Community and Safety and Crime Prevention Advisory Committee. So I think that she was just bringing the charter to the Crime Prevention Committee to make them aware of it. So I think it was just looking for some support from them for that item.
If I can continue, I have no problem with that being raised at both committees and the work plan issues working through themselves through the appropriate methods. So I'm fine with that. The other one I wanted to touch on was 5.2, and it's in regards to Neighborhood Watch. Sorry. And it's not specific on that point, but I've recently heard a lot of comments that there is no longer a Neighborhood Watch in London, and I know that not to be the case. I think perhaps there's some confusion between the Block Parent Program and Neighborhood Watch. So I wanted to take an opportunity to raise that Neighborhood Watch is still an organization that's active in London. I believe that they get some city funding, but I'll look to staff to confirm that. They do. And local neighborhood charters can be started by organizing or contacting Neighborhood Watch and kind of being organized on a local level. So recently we've had a number of issues in Ward 10, and I kept hearing the comment over and over that there's no more Neighborhood Watch, and that is not the case. There is still Neighborhood Watch in the city, and I wanted the opportunity to highlight that.
Thank you, Councillor, and it's quite easy to start a Neighborhood Watch program. I know I have a newer neighborhood in Ward 5 that started a brand new neighborhood association, and they also started a Neighborhood Watch program there. So it's a good organization, they do good work, and it brings the community together as well. So I'll look for a mover for, do I already have a mover for this report? Councillor Ridley, seconded by Councillor Sully, and we can vote.
Closing the vote, the motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. So item 4.5 is the fourth report of the Diversity, Inclusion, and Anti-Oppression Advisory Committee. I wanted to call committee's attention to item 7.1, which is that the city clerk be requested to undertake a review of the potential provision of child minding for advisory committees. I just wanted to go back in time and remind committee that when council passed a resolution about child minding, it was specifically for standing committees and not advisory committees. And it was specific to not be for councilors or staff, but only for members of the public who were attending standing committee, PPMs at standing committee, public participation meetings. So I don't know where committee wants to land on 7.1. If I'll look to committee for comments on that. Councillor Armstrong.
I'm wondering if there's an opportunity to canvass these committees and see if there is even, you know, how many individuals might take advantage of such a program rather than sort of spend more time on it and find out that there's one person that would use it. You know, I mean, obviously if there's 6 or 7 and I think we need to know that, because maybe if there's nobody, then we're spending some time on something that may not need to be done, but if the results come back that there may be some.
I think the clerk might have some information for you, Councillor.
Thank you through the chair. I can't speak specifically to any need that may be presented at the advisory committee level. However, I can advise that there have been some pretty significant challenges in trying to implement the direction that we already have with respect to space and securing a provider and all of the logistics that go along with that. And so that's why we haven't been able to roll it out yet, because we're still trying to work through those challenges of even providing the service at the standing committee level for public participation meetings.
Well, maybe, and I can understand that before it was even said, I could see there might be some logistics there, but maybe there's an opportunity to look out or look at other ways of dealing with that issue. Maybe there's daycare providers out there, and as for an example, I think we do, if people ask for parking passes, we provide them if they're coming to meetings, that sort of thing. So maybe there's some other way of dealing with the need for this. And so maybe the clerks could go back. Obviously, there's already some research being done on how to deal with it. Maybe they can look at if there's any other options to deal with the situation in some other way, rather than the way that we immediately thought it would be handled here and by whom and all that other stuff. Maybe there's some other opportunity for us to deal with it. So I leave that with you. I don't want to make a motion or anything. I think the clerks will figure this out, so.
Councillor Sully?
Since we have an ad for direction, do something with it. I think the intent is so to attract new people because the terms are going to expire, and to say people that have kids, to not be a barrier. So I know that there is already a conversation that we're having that's similar but not directly the same as this. So is it not possible to just refer this to that conversation? Because it seems like it's a bigger conversation, and maybe it goes back to corporate services where they can better deal with it. I don't think this committee really has. I get it's coming through us because it's the committee that reports to us, but it seems like a corporate services related conversation with child minding, whether that be, I think the counselor before me was suggesting, if the city's going to say, hypothetically, provide, bring a receipt, and then they might use it at an off-site facility, and then the city might compensate the advisory member. I don't know what it might be, but I think for us to have a direction or decision, that seems very, like we need a lot more conversations. I think it needs to go to maybe corporate services. So I don't know if that's appropriate.
Councillor Ridley, did you have your hand up?
I did, because I'm looking at the request. Would you like to go back to Councillor Sully first?
He's looking for an answer from clerks on that. I absolutely agree that that it could be put into the bigger conversation and referred to corporate services. I'll get the clerk's comment on that.
No.
I think there was a reason why, and it was Councillor Ridley's motion at the very beginning, I believe, was it not? It was. But I think we did look at it, did we not, Councillor Ridley, at the bigger picture of child minding, and didn't we narrow it down to just public participation meetings at standing committees? Go ahead.
Thank you. I'll go back to my original comments, and I may answer your question as I do. So the comment, or the 7.1 that's in front of us, is a request from our advisory committee saying, can you take a look at and review potential provisions for advisory committees and report back at a future meeting? That's a direction that I'm happy to support today. I think it's fine for us to take a look at, is there a potential? I think things that are going to factor into that are some difficulties we've already run into with the RFP and the provision under the previous direction for PPM, and that'll be reported back. I think that should be reported back to the appropriate standing committee of council, and also to the committee that made the request, I'd be fine with that, but I think it needs to come back to council because I think there's going to be cost implications. There is going to need to be a budget look at that. I think when that information comes back, that might be referred to the overall review of the advisory committees that's already underway with clerks. So I think there are multiple processes that are in place right now, but I see absolutely no issue with an advisory committee flagging for us to say, you might want to look at childcare and see what might be available and let us know about that. So I'll support the recommendation that is here today. I think things that will be included will be a scan of need, willingness to use, things like that, and get that information back.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Squire.
What I'm hearing, at least from the clerk, is we were trying to implement it in another area, and I would imagine it's not just a simple matter. I mean, I would think there's all kinds of logistical issues, people saying, you know, trying to find out how many people need childcare in a certain evening, then finding out, well, maybe they don't need it anymore. I would have to know a lot more about this before I approved it. And the other thing I would like to point out is that all kinds of people have all kinds of challenges attending committee meetings, whether they're advisory committees or otherwise. And I understand why we're concentrating on this one particular issue. But lots of people, you know, spend a lot of time away from their families, adult children. They spend time away from their jobs. They make all kinds of sacrifices to come to meetings. And I worry about, you know, how far down the road do you want to go, you know, on these particular issues. If you do it in the instance of childcaring, well, what other instance are we going to do it in? I mean, are we going to have people covering off people's shifts at work? I mean, you might say, well, that would never happen. Well, you know, these things may come up. So all I'm saying is if you want to refer it, that's fine. But I just hate to see staff spending hours and hours and hours of work on something that's very logistically difficult, that may not in the end provide a huge benefit to people who do want to become involved in civic matters. And, you know, I've been at lots of meetings in the evening when people bring their children, and I've seen their children, and people even on the committees will say, look, here's your matter. I'll take care of your child for this period of time. I've seen it many times. And I've certainly been at library board meetings where children have been welcome to come into the room at the meetings, and we've made sure they're okay. They're enjoying the process. Somebody will watch out for them. So there's lots of different ways to skin a cat, and I just want to be really careful that we take a process that's not so structured that it doesn't work.
Councillor Sally.
I just had a question about, just want to confirm, the advisory committees, I know here at council, people are allowed to bring their children with them, right? I just wanted to confirm that. I'm not sure if there's any policies that speak against that, or just wanted to kind of confirm.
I'm seeing the clerk shake her head, and from any of the policy manuals that I've looked at, I've never seen a restriction.
Great, no, that was just helpful. I just wanted to remind the public that, you know, if should they choose to, that's an option they have, because I know Councillor Squire was just mentioning that. So I think, my only concern with, you know, the direction maybe really was going was I didn't want it to come back as two separate reports. I just wanted to come back as one, because if we make a decision and then 6 months another report comes about something similar, I'd just rather make one decision.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm not sure if we're working on any language at this point in terms of receiving the report with direction for 7.1, but I would be happy with the clause that's in there with an added report back to the appropriate standing committee as well. Is what I would be looking to move. I don't know if I'd have a seconder. I'd like to take the opportunity to raise a couple of things. I think Councillor Squire is quite right. I've been in organizations where there is childcare, and sometimes that extends into elder care and other situations. So I think having an idea in the scope of what we're looking at is important. I think that this piece of information, what we're looking for is for volunteers who come and give us their time with no compensation or anything. And if they're going to be out-of-pocket expenses, that's something that we need to consider whether or not we are interested in provisions for that would potentially be on site, but we know there's some problems with that, or maybe a reimbursement or something like we do with bus tickets. So I'm happy to look at that and look at where the need is, if that can break down barriers. One thing I want to caution people about is the expectation that all childcare situations and families are the same. And so if one family can bring a child to a meeting, that's great and wonderful. That's not always the case. I'm the parent of 2 children who are both on the autism spectrum. It would not be appropriate in 99% of the circumstances. So if someone said to me, well, Bill can bring his daughter, why can't you bring yours? That is not a path that we wish to travel down in any way, shape, or form. So I think looking at this, looking at what the need is and what the possibilities are and reporting that back, I think we'll need to identify a source of funding. If it's going to have a cost attached to it, that may be something that we may not be interested in pursuing. At the same time, when we're looking at the advisory committees and we're looking at potentially amalgamating a couple things that are similar, we may see a reduced cost that we could then allocate into a fund that might cover the expense of someone who can't cover it and would therefore be excluded. So I will look to make that motion when it's available.
Okay, the motion is available, and Councillor Armstrong has indicated that he will second that motion. I just want to highlight one of the comments that the clerk made, that the review that's already taking place regarding child minding at public participation meetings has run into a roadblock with regard to providers even available to provide this service. So just want you to know that it's fine for us to move in this direction. It's fine for us to support this, but if there's nobody out there willing to do this work, whether it's voluntary or paid, it's, we may not be able to move past the point of good intentions. So we have a mover and a seconder, and I don't see any more comments, so I think we can vote. Councillor Armstrong is indicating that he is voting yes manually.
Closing the vote, the motion passes 5-0.
Thank you. And the final item is the deferred matters list. Are there any comments or questions on the deferred matters list? I'm not seeing anyone. And so Councillor Sully is indicating that he will move it. Councillor Armstrong is seconding, and so we can vote.
Closing the vote, the motion carries 5-0.
And I'll look for a motion to adjourn. Councillor Armstrong, seconded by Councillor Ridley. All in favor? I'm not seeing any opposed, so that carries. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, staff, for coming out.